All right, welcome to the Grappling Physio podcast. We're here with David Lee Hale from Gracie Barra Walsall, or Gracie Barra WS2. Dave, how you doing this morning? All right.
Not bad, all good, thank you. No complaints here. Good.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for coming on as a guest. And this came about because I went to the gym the other night, and we've been kind of like interacting on Instagram, which is the whole point of the podcast and on Instagram, isn't it? To meet new people and, expand your circle, etc. And yeah, had a really good night over at the gym. Really liked it. Great atmosphere and a great vibe, and a nice little killer right at the end. That little sprint session literally killed me off. The body was full of lactic acid on the drive home. But no, it's also good because a previous guest and a long-term friend of mine spent some price trains at your gym, and he's been saying, "No, you should come up and check it out." So it's great to meet you. I suppose it'd be good to kind of go back to your beginnings. How did you get into BJJ?
Yeah, so like everybody else, really, I think UFC. I think back in 2000 and probably 2009, 2010, started watching the UFC. So I actually started MMA before I did any grappling, and then realised very quickly that I didn't like being punched in the face, like a few of us do. I think MMA, I think you either love MMA or you don't like MMA. But what I discovered is I actually love the grappling aspect of MMA. So I thought, actually, let's go and find somewhere to train. So I eventually arrived at Gracie Barra Birmingham with Braulio, kind of back in probably 2011, 12, as a fresh white belt with a little bit of MMA experience. Really cool, really good. Loved the gym. Was just a bit of a problem to get there. I was based out in Cannock at the time, so Cannock to Birmingham, plus fitting in work, training wasn't great. And that's where I met my now professor Neil Simkin, who I think was a purple belt at the time. I think I met him while he was training at Birmingham as a purple belt, and he just kind of started his gym in Warsaw, which was obviously a lot closer to where I live and on the way home. So kind of hooked up with Professor Neil, probably 2011, and yeah, been under Professor Neil ever since. And always trained at either Gracie Barra WS1 from that point, which was the old gym before we moved. I spent a little bit of time. I live in Tamworth now, so I moved to Tamworth as well. Spent a little bit of time at Gracie Barra Tamworth with Professor David Overson, which was a really good experience as well. So yeah, and then here we are now, Academy owner, 2023.
Fantastic. What's that like, Dave? What's the go through the experiences, the good parts, the bad parts, everything? What's that like owning an academy? I think people have a preconceived conception when they look at gym owners and they go, "God, fantastic! What a life! All he does is do jiu-jitsu all day, every day, etc." But I suppose you'll know the real ins and outs of it.
Yeah, definitely. I think, first things first, I'm super blessed to do what I do. I know everybody says that, but I am, to be able to make a career and a living and follow my passion. I think not many people can do that. So I'm really blessed. The things that people don't see behind the scenes is it's a constant stream of I think my academy now, we've grown. We've got just over 100 adults now. I was really lucky because I took over an existing academy. So just to give you a bit of background on that, I took over Gracie Barra WS1 about a year and a half ago from my professor Neil. Neil had Cannock and WS1, and decided to relocate everything over to Cannock just because to manage the two academies. And I think if you've ever trained under Professor Neil, he's a very hands-on, especially likes to be on the mat all the time. He likes to teach, he likes to know all the students. And I think balancing the two academies, they wanted to focus. And Cannock is a huge, massive mat space and super academy. So I had an opportunity to take WS1. The beautiful aspect of that is that predominantly it's white belts. So as a brown belt, it's predominantly white belt. So I can guide people through that early part of the journey. Make no illusion, I'm still, as a brown belt, I've still got lots to learn in jiu-jitsu myself. So to be able to train in the day and then switch to teach the guys of an evening is really, really good. I think people assume it's all sat in Costa all day and then just rocking up to the gym, putting the key in the door, and then teaching some classes. But actually, an average day for me, running an academy is kind of get up. I will head over to Cannock to get my own training in if I can. So between 10 and 11, I'll head over and train myself. And then kind of afternoon, I'll have a look at the class plan. I teach different age groups. So I've got ages from 4 to 7. Then we've got 7 till kind of teens. Then we've got teens. Then I've got a beginners program, an advanced program, and now a ladies program. So I'll kind of look in the afternoon, look at what the theme of the week is, and just a rough structure for planning that class. Not only what we're going to teach from the mechanics of the actual move, but actually the concept of what I want the team to get out of the class. So it's more concept based than just showing a move. I think that you can go and train places and people just show a move without the concept behind the move. And then head over to the academy. I think people don't probably understand these. Once all the teaching's done, it's then that clean down. So sometimes we're not leaving the academy until 10, half 10 at night, back home, and then we start again. So we're open 7 days a week at WS2. So we do an open mat of a Sunday, which one of the team would generally cover. But 6 days a week I'm teaching jiu-jitsu.
Is it easy to achieve a kind of work-life balance then, Dave, if you are 7 days a week?
I think so, because the one thing that did suffer when we first started was my own training, and that was the frustration for me right at the start, was I wasn't getting on the mat myself. But coming into this year, definitely we don't do day classes at the moment, so we were doing day classes, and to be honest, in the WS2 the attendance just wasn't there, so we're having 2 or 3 people turn up to a day class. So we don't do day classes, so I can get my own training. I think it's that balance. And as far as work-life balance goes, the academy is run by myself and my wife, so it's a blessing to like work with your wife, but also not as well at the same time. So we'll leave that there. But so it is, and I think that because it's a passion of mine, and because I do what I love, I know it sounds really cheesy and people say it, but I don't really feel like I'm going to work. Right, I love the team, got a great relationship with the team. Doesn't feel like a job, really.
That's good. Why do we do that? Why do we kind of play it down? Why do you think that's a common thing? What we do is, and I'm guilty of doing this, but a lot of people do it. They say, "I know this is cheesy," or "I know this is this." It's a real. Do you think it's an acceptance thing over here, where we don't want to brag, and we don't want to say, "Yeah, I've got a really good number at the moment," or "I'm onto a good number," just in case the rug gets pulled out from under us?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. But also, like, don't get me wrong, it is challenging, right? It can be really challenging at times. I think when you throw a group of people together on a mat from all different backgrounds, all different personalities, but jiu-jitsu is the great leveler, isn't it? I think everybody on the mat is an equal, and we have some really great relationships. But sometimes you're dealing with really, really complex, personalities. Everyone's in jiu-jitsu for a different reason. So I think because I see it from an academy owner's point of view, I've got that filter of the academy owner, so it isn't all wonderful sometimes. So that's probably why it's downplayed a little bit, because it can be tough. It's the best job in the world, but also can be really tough at times. So, but I think you're right. We do play it down. I am living my best life.
That's more like it. Can you give us an example of where you've felt like this has been quite challenging and it's not all roses and stuff? Just for, let's say, there might be another purple belt out there who's just set up an academy and they might get something from this. So from your experience.
Yeah. So I guess for me, it's balancing that. It's balancing the 20-year-old super athletic 5 times a week ultra competitive blue belt with the 45-year-old hobbyist. That's the biggest challenge that I've found in the adults program. My academy is, we're open for everybody, and I do have both. I have champions, in our first year we created British champions, which is really good. But I also have the hobbyist who wants to drop in once and twice a week. So that challenge and the complexity has been able to deliver a class for everybody, where everybody can take something home from that class. But also when you come to live training and sparring, that everybody gets what they need. That hobbyist gets the chance to test that technique in a live environment or to train. And also the competitor who's got a competition in 2 weeks also gets the rounds in as well. And I think that's that balance that I think sometimes when I've trained at other academies, you've got a room full of absolute killers who all want to compete, which is amazing. And then you go somewhere else and it is super hobbyist based. I think it's amazing if you can balance all in the same room. And that's a constant challenge, right? To be able to balance the competitor and the hobbyist in the same room.
How do you do that? I mean, are you more selective? Do you kind of give guidance when it does come to sparring? Do you like say, right, you guys pair off, etc., or do you just kind of let them figure it out themselves?
Yeah, I let them figure it out. I see what the room's doing, because I think sometimes there's a tendency to spar with the people that you constantly spar with, right? And I think that what you can find is that everyone goes to their familiar partner. And I think I'm really keen on, right, just go and train with someone you've never trained with before. You've got like 30, 40 people on the mat sometimes. Go and roll with someone that you've never rolled with before. And I think there's a big emphasis on a roll and a spar. For me, that absolutely the team know they're two different things. If we're rolling, we're rolling. But if we're sparring and we're coming to competition, then we're go a little bit harder. But we do like specific comp training for the comp team. So for a Friday evening, we'll put on a specific comp class where the buzzer just goes on. Sometimes just 10-minute rounds, and we just train. So for the guys who are competing and ultra competitive, and those guys who really want to train at that intensity that they feel in competition, that's Friday night. Come in, start a timer, off we go. See you in an hour.
What about your own kind of like experience in jiu-jitsu? What would you say is the biggest kind of change that you've noticed from when you first started learning it back? Did you say you've been doing it 13 years?
About 13, yeah, coming up to
Yeah.
13 years.
So and when you were back in Birmingham, was that when it was at the back of Broad Street?
Yeah, when it was above the garage, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
When they just moved there, I think it was just as they'd moved in, because I remember one of the first sessions got roped into carrying up some tiles upstairs for the start of the class, so lugging up boxes of tiles. So Bradley had managed to get us all lifting tiles up the stairs before class. So classic. It was good. It was good. Really
So
good.
if you think back to the early days when, well, were your beginning days when you were learning and kind of like going through that element of jiu-jitsu, just I know it's different when you're firstly introduced to it. I can understand that.
Yep.
But what would you say has kind of changed?
I guess for my own self, I probably would go back in time, and I probably wouldn't have so many gym wars at white and blue belt. I think that's the thing that I've learned now. I have to manage my training now. I'm still young. I'm like 42. I'm still young, but I definitely feel the mileage of jiu-jitsu, right? And I think that sometimes jiu-jitsu can be a bit like a car. I think once you get to 100,000 miles, stuff starts to break. So this is where now I have to look at maintenance and stuff for my body. So if I could go back, I think we just don't have those gym wars anymore. We don't have that roll to the death that I think we used to 10 years ago, which was, yeah, the sport's evolved. And I think not the challenge, but the great thing now, the opportunities we're sharing jiu-jitsu with so many different people. Before it was predominantly people maybe crossing over from MMA, or people who loved UFC, or people who had a martial arts or a fighting background previously. But now you get the hobbyist walking. So I think you just have to manage that training differently now. So, but those were good days, right? They were like the gym wars were the good days. But just from a kind of stress on your body, probably wasn't a great idea.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I always say to everyone I chat with, from especially being a physio and it been my kind of bread and butter, it's not it's not a chance of if I get injured. It's when you get injured, and it's going to happen. You know, if Braulio can, you know, seriously damage his neck and still kind of return, then we're all. And I've suffered my own multiple injuries. There's always something that's happening, and at the age of, you know, well, my age is irrelevant. Never mind that. But the age of 43, it does get harder. Like I feel the difference if so I've trained 3 times this week. I'll probably get another session in, but I've got to do something else to balance that. I've had to do loads of foam rolling, rehab, some TheraBand work on my shoulders. Sparred hard last night. We're getting ready to compete. At the end of most of us from my team are getting ready to compete, and I'm a hobbyist, but every now and again you got to jump in and compete and see where you're at. But it takes its toll. So my shoulders were wrecked last night, and it's like, you know, so I've been doing the TheraBand exercises today, you know, just to keep my rotator cuff nice and strong, etc. And you do have to balance it. And I think sometimes hobbyists and I have these aspirations. I'd love to train every day. Yeah, probably great, but my body won't take it. It won't take 5 sessions of jiu-jitsu a week. No way, no way. I could do 3 at you know, a hard, heavy pace, maybe a good competition session in there. But I've got to do a session of hot yoga. I've got to go for a swim. I've got to do some stretching to compensate that, and to make sure that I'm not, because otherwise I'm starting to go like a tight coiled spring, and by the end of the week I'm just like, oh, I've overdone it, you know. And then that's the kind of balance I find for me. So we're in the same age bracket, and it's interesting to hear that. But do you not think in the early days that those kind of gym wars are kind of essential? You know, do you know what I mean? So you can, it's better to experience them, and to get to where you were now, to have more appreciation. I know you can deliver more kind of structured training as per your curriculum, etc. But realistically, if somebody says I want to compete, you've got to kind of say, well, here's the deep end. You've got to jump in there a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. And it was good. It was good, beneficial, because I think it did definitely test your jiu-jitsu, right? I think when, you know, when you're going full blast and it's realistic, and, you know, don't forget, like, you know, jiu-jitsu is essentially, you know, without being dramatic, it's essentially a fight to the death, right? It's, you're in a situation with training partner, you know, you tap, you let go, you shake hands, you go again. But, you know, I think it's, and that's what I love about the sport. It's super realistic, right? You can go as hard as you want But I think you're really right. I think what you say is, when you start getting a little bit older, you can't go as hard as you want 5 days a week. But yeah, no, they were good times. They were good times. They were good times.
How's that relationship with you and Neil now then? And now you're kind of like fell under his wing, to run the club. How's that going? Do you feel like it's kind of strengthened you guys, or?
Yeah, absolutely. He's super supportive. So he's super honest. So when I need to hear stuff that perhaps I don't want to hear, I think that's the great thing, right? When you run an academy, people look to you, and you're almost the kind of pinnacle of knowledge in that room. So people look to you, and I think having like someone who's a mentor that will give you that tough conversation when you need it is really, really important. So yeah, when I head over to Canada, it's great to train with him. So yeah, I've trained under personnel for like 13 years. So.
Do you get out to other clubs, Dave? Do you like to go to the clubs that are non kind of like Gracie Barra yourself, or?
Yeah, I have done previously. So I live in Tamworth, so there's a couple of places in Tamworth that are non-Gracie Barra. It's always nice. I think probably, I don't know if you're the same as me, but when me and my wife are looking to go on holiday, we're always looking at. That's probably don't let the world know that. But
just Dave, don't say that.
But you always have a look on the map, don't you? When we looked at holiday yesterday, she's like, "Oh, that one looks good. That one looks great." So you have to plan it around training. But yeah, absolutely. I'm up. Yeah, when I can.
The cat's out the back now, mate. You've ruined it for. Why are you packing the gi when we're going to the Canaries?
There's always somewhere to try, and that's the beautiful thing about the way the sport's growing, right? I think 10 years ago, you go on holiday and like, right, you have to land in a big city, but now there's like places popping up everywhere, so it's not so much of a problem these days. Just sneaking the gi, and that's the biggest challenge right now, not finding somewhere to train.
Yeah, paying that extra baggage allowance on Ryanair to get you to get your gi. Yeah, no, absolutely. I try and make an effort every time I go back to Ireland a lot because the family's from there, and I try and get into a different gym when I'm in Ireland. I try every time I've been abroad, unless it's very much a specific family holiday, I will try and get in somewhere. Do you know what I mean? And it's great. It's absolutely great. It's amazing. You can message somebody and say, "Hey, I'm in the area. Yeah, come in, no problem. We'll see you training." And I've done some online. I've taught some online courses, and somebody in the background has gone, "Is that a gi hanging up in the background?" And you're like, "Yeah." "Oh, I do jits. I'll be in your area. Can I come and train?" "Yeah, no problem." And it's fantastic. It really is. It's brilliant. Now there is another aspect that we want to talk about, because you also run something called the project.
Yeah. So I'm one of 6 of people. So essentially, and it kind of spawned from my academy being in Walsall. So with what's going on with cost of living crisis at the moment, it can sometimes be a challenge for people to train jiu-jitsu anywhere, right? So I wanted to start getting involved with specifically, first of all, kind of half-term clubs. So I think if you think back to what Marcus Rashford did with kind of free school meals, etc. So where I are based in Walsall, they do like a half-term project. So children who get free school meals, they go and do an activity, and then they get a hot meal or some kind of meal provided. So we looked at doing that, but unfortunately the council, because Gracie Barra is a limited company, wouldn't allow us to do it. So basically, essentially 6 of us from all grapple who kind of do this in the day, essentially when nothing else is going on. So the long-term plan is to kind of go into schools and teach in schools and half-term clubs and unlock funding. So that's the challenge, right? Unlocking all the funding. So it's a CIC, so it's a community interest company. So it's a non-profit, it's a charity, and it would predominantly go into schools and kind of teach people who have been excluded from jiu-jitsu, kind of socially or economically. So my part's pretty small in that. It will essentially be a bit of coaching, but the project is aimed at just exposing those who definitely don't get any access to jiu-jitsu. So it's really exciting in its early doors, but something that I can do away from the academy. It's really good.
Okay, right. Right, so about that, Dave. So we had to take a small little break there and just set up a new group. But anyway, we're back. Before we kind of started talking about the project, there was something that we also missed, which is quite unique to kind of Gracie Barra WS2, and that is the fact that you've linked up with Team GB Judo, which have their Centre of Excellence within Walsall also, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of our students are ex full-time judo athletes that have transitioned to BJJ. So that link came from there essentially. And Nigel Donoghue, so he's the UK program director from British Judo, basically reached out to me and asked a question about, I want my guys to do a little bit more Nawaza. We're noticing in judo that the groundwork is becoming more and more important as the sport evolves. And they're finding in competition that a lot of the other nations are cross-training. So inquired about the possibility of what can we do. So it turns out of a Tuesday, we basically train together. So the WS2 team will train with the GB athletes. So it's the Paralympians and the Olympians. And what will happen is on their training timetable for the week, they'll have a dedicated Nawaza BJJ slot assigned to them as an athlete. So some weeks they're away on competitions or they're away on camp. And then other weeks we've got kind of 50 people on the mat. So it's really exciting. It's good for our comp team because obviously, we know the link to judo and BJJ. It's really good for our comp team. And it's really good for them. I think that the main difference straight away is that the intensity and of judo versus the kind of BJJ 5-6 minute fight is very different. So generally we end up weathering the storm of that assault and then starting to use some BJJ, but it's just beneficial for both. It's beneficial for those guys to get some of the extra angles, especially what they do when they talk about turnovers in judo. So when they hit the front in judo and they've got a limited amount of time to turn over and essentially employ a ground technique before the referee stops it and starts it again. So for those guys to have different opportunities to look at submissions from the ground is really good. And it helps our comp team with that kind of the intensity of training with kind of GB athletes. So it's a win-win for both of us. So it's really unique, but it's a really great relationship. And some of those guys have crossed over and will train with us under Gracie Barra. So have become Gracie Barra members. So it's really exciting. It's really exciting.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's really good. It's quite interesting when Roger Gracie said on the Lex Friedman podcast, when he kind of first come over to the UK and he was training down in the Budokai in London, he was like, look, train judo. If you're a BJJ athlete, train judo and you'll realize how poor your stand-up is. Mm-hmm. And if you go back further enough, if you look at some of like, one of the greatest judokas to come out of the UK, Neil Adams, and you look at some of his Olympic matches, it was literally it was 90% Nawaza, which is
absolutely
modern BJJ. So they kind of, because of the sport of judo, they've adapted a few things, like double leg takedowns, etc. They've got rid of all of those. They've made it very much. You've got a certain time frame, like you mentioned. As soon as you do go to the ground, the clock starts clicking. The clock starts ticking. Couldn't get that out. And then it's a case of they've got to kind of do something fast and quick. So how do you that's very interesting. And I'd say there'd be some much more kind of advanced BJJ players looking to jump on board with that. But how, when you see, you mentioned earlier, you've got the hobbyist, how do you kind of I don't want to say protect, but make sure that the hobbyist doesn't get absolutely crushed, smashed, their confidence ruined, because essentially they're going in against Olympic athletes. So already there's going to be that level of fitness, intensity, desire to win, professionalism against somebody who's like, well, hang on a minute, I'm a 2-stripe white belt. I do 2 sessions a week. Is this relevant?
Yeah, it is a challenge. It is absolutely a challenge. But I guess like for those guys, for the judo guys, I think there's 2 different mentalities, right? The first mentality is that this is completely separate to my normal program. So it is different, but the challenge arises with those guys, their need to win. So it can be a challenge. It can be a challenge. You wouldn't put a hobbyist 2-stripe white belt with these guys. They generally kind of train hardest for that competition team. But the guys are really respectful. They're all really respectful. They understand what the session's about. They understand that it's to give them some extra noise, and it's not one of their days where they have to impress all the coaches and compete. So, there's that bit of mutual respect between both. Still get some good tear-ups though. It's quite interesting. And I just think from a BJJ perspective, the opportunities to get to the back are always there, right? So this is the big one for us. It's kind of like the scarf or the kesakatami when they put themselves on the front because they feel safe in judo. All of a sudden, these opportunities for us to get to the back are there. So it's really fascinating for both sports that actually they're not safe in some positions. Of course, we don't stand with them. So we don't start every round standing because there's no point. That's just asking to get injured. You know, we haven't got that intensity. We haven't got that grip fight, and we haven't got the movement. And I think that the challenge with kind of when we learn BJJ is it feels like our takedowns are very forward and backwards, whereas the judo guys, it's more they move side to side and they turn and they just move so much better. The footwork, it's footwork, right? So we try and, you know, we've incorporated a couple of judo sessions, but our BJJ footwork is like light years behind them. So we don't stand. But yeah, the ground is really good. It's really fascinating. It's really fascinating to see where the two sports have gone in different directions. But yeah, and it's just, I guess, showing those guys that there is opportunities for a BJJ athlete to sneak out the back door and get onto the back, right? So it's really good. They're really good sessions. They're really tough sessions.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity for all JITS clubs to basically say this is something that we need to kind of recognize it as a weakness and this is where we need to improve. So I think you've started something potentially quite unique, quite bespoke, and I think a lot of people will follow suit, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
you look at you got like my coach is former para team GB judo, and he does a lot of judo for BJJ, and he'll alter the kind of stand-up technique, etc. So if you do take somebody down, which I suppose would be like a nippon in judo, you're not exposing your back, etc. So you're in a better kind of dominant position. You've also got Owen Livesey, who's doing. No, he transitioned from judo, Olympic judo level to top BJJ, ADCC, and he's doing like a lot of his courses are now judo for BJJ as well.
Yeah, and to be fair, the guys are really open. So we do a gi session, then we take the gi off and do a no gi. So for those guys, there's no grips anymore. And then we start introducing some of the resting aspects of kind of submission grappling. So the team are really open. To take the gi off as well. So they are really good sessions. Really, really good.
That sounds interesting. What's the impact of that then, getting rid of the gi for them?
Obviously the grips have gone, but you're dealing with world-class athletes. So, you know, athleticism and strength and power, and, you know, it doesn't take people long to transition to a wrist or an arm, you know what I mean? So it doesn't take long to change the grips. And it is more kind of obviously wrestling based as well. So we look at kind of wrestling stuff and just introducing like footlocks and introducing the like leg game a little bit for those guys. So obviously in judo they can't switch legs at all, can they? So for those guys, you know, that's more of a session. You know, when we look at no-gi and we look at, it's more of a session for them just to kind of expand their grappling knowledge, if that makes sense. You know, they're probably not going to use most of the techniques that we teach in a no-gi class, but you know, these are all black belt judokas. I think, you know, to give them an exposure to that leg lock game, to show them actually, when you transition to jiu-jitsu and you put your legs in a certain position and you don't mind your P's and Q's in certain areas, you know, you expose yourself to a completely different game, right? So it's really interesting as a coach to watch your kind of top BJJ competition team who are only, you know, kind of blue and purple belts against these like Olympic level athletes. It's really good. It's really good for a coach to see. And, you know, don't get me wrong, our team have learned a lot as well. Our team have learned a lot about that intensity of that onslaught of like a judoka who's trying to get through your guard and smash through your guard, you know, with the greatest respect. The guard passing isn't technical. It's knee cuts, it's smash pass, you know. So for our competition teams to be put under that pressure, that continual pressure has been really, really good.
Brilliant. So let's go back to the project that you were talking about earlier. So we mentioned, well, we started talking about is it the Jiu-Jitsu project or is it the project?
The project Jiu-Jitsu.
The project Jiu-Jitsu, right. Sorry, let's get it right.
Yeah.
So you set that up with 5 other members or friends?
Yeah, so there's 6 of us. So we have 3 people who train BJJ, 2 people who coach BJJ. We've got a social worker, we've got a counsellor, and also an expert in the charity sector. So between the 6, there's enough there for everybody. So I guess, like, if I can explain why, that's probably a good place to start with that. So, you know, my academy is based in Walsall Town Centre. So, you know, cost of living, I'm in probably one of the most deprived areas of the West Midlands. And I think, you know, although the academy is great and the academy is thriving and it's doing really well, there are still so many people who are excluded from jiu-jitsu. And it's not just from Gracie Barra, it's who are excluded from jiu-jitsu, right? So let's make that really clear, that the cost of entry for jiu-jitsu at any academy or any club can be quite expensive. So, you know, when people inquire about learning jiu-jitsu, and, you know, we're quite honest with people, what we don't do is we don't bring them into the academy under false pretenses and give them a trial and then hit them with the numbers at the end. You know, I think in Walsall, I have to be a little bit different. I have to be upfront with my potential students. You know, we tell them what the cost is, and sometimes, you know, the cost is prohibitive. You know, people are expecting, I think sometimes people expect to go to a church hall and we roll out some mats and you pay £2 a session. you know, when you look at the overheads of running a full-time academy, it's not viable to do that. So, and I just think across the whole of the UK, so this project, you know, although it starts in the West Midlands, you know, we've got some really big ambitions across the UK. And I just think there's an opportunity to kind of get into those areas like schools and half-term clubs. We're just starting a partnership with the violence reduction team for West Midlands Police. So we're at an advanced stage of meetings with those guys about how can we go there in the day and do a jiu-jitsu program for some of the people who have offended and some of the people who are victims of offences as well. So we can give those, you know, jiu-jitsu gives us that, gives people that confidence and gives, you know, might give somebody a pathway. But I guess that's kind of where it's at. It's right at the early stages. But I guess, like, if we can look at what our long-term goal is, so what the idea of the project is, it's not about just going into schools and you know, going to school and teaching some grappling techniques, or going to a violence reduction unit and teaching grappling, or a half-term club. We really want to get to a stage where with enough funding we can do scholarships. So the idea is if we see some, you know, and it's like any sport, isn't it? You know, sometimes you find like a diamond in the rough, right? Who's never exposed to jiu-jitsu. You know, the next amazing grappler could be out there, but never gets a chance to put a gi on. So what we're looking at is that exit strategy. So the exit strategy looks like we can then get enough funding to basically phone a local jiu-jitsu academy in the UK, anywhere in the UK. You know, we've got great relationships with professors, and go, I've got this amazing young person. They've come through one of our 6-week programs. They've been into the school to show jiu-jitsu. They show real promise. What's the cost for a year's worth of jiu-jitsu and a uniform to get them set up?
Brilliant.
And then that scholarship scheme. So that's the long-term goal, right? Is to get people into jiu-jitsu with that funding. So, you know, to imagine the ability to be able to phone a professor and go, I've got this amazing kid. How much it costs? Amazing. Here's the money. Let's get them set up.
Yeah, it's fantastic. There's a lot of parallels and similarities with some of the forces charities. I think Reorg, which is designed for ex-forces and veterans, and especially guys, amputees, etc. I think the Reorg charity does that, where they basically say, look, if you want to start jiu-jitsu, BJJ will pay for your yearly membership. Where do you live? We'll also buy you the gi, etc. Keep on doing it, because it's a good investment in that person to help them cope and manage their symptoms. So that sounds fantastic, mate. That's really, really good. It's quite interesting because that's very much a social charity stroke enterprise versus the difference between what essentially Gracie Barra is, which is very much a systematized business approach, you know, to jiu-jitsu. And did this come about because of the limitations of running a limited company? And did you think this has got better reach?
A little bit, I guess. I mean, my academy is great. It does really well a little bit. I think it was triggered from what's going on in the economy right now. You know, that's triggered it. You know, my academy is not in an area that's super affluent. You know, we've got some really affluent areas in the West Midlands, not anywhere in the UK, but we've also got, you know, when you look at the heat map of poverty, you know, a lot of those areas are on my doorstep. So it kind of just triggered a thought of, actually, you know, this is replicated all around the UK. So why don't we try and do something? You know, the end goal is to get people into jiu-jitsu, right? And I think that it just triggered from where our economy is, really. And I guess it's difficult, right? My wife will say to me, I'm the world's worst businessman, right? Because if I had my way, anyone who comes through the door, I'd throw the gi on them and they'd get on the mats and train jiu-jitsu. But I have to be a realist that the overheads of running an academy full time, especially with utilities, etc., is just really, really tough. So I can't be that. So, you know, I have to be that. We have to be business people at the end of the day to run a successful academy. It takes a lot of overhead. So, yeah, economy and just that reach, really.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that, because it kind of throws into contrast that hashtag that we always see, which is BJJ or Jiu-Jitsu for everyone. It's not really for everyone, is it? It's, you know, it's for if you can afford it, and if you can afford to pay your membership and pay your fees. And that's where these type of charities, I suppose, and these projects bridge that gap. It's interesting
Absolutely.
what you said on the heat map for Warsaw. I think they call it, the council do studies on different areas, start with their own areas, and it's called low horizon.
Okay.
So it basically means that the potential to break out of that poverty area, within that area, there is a low horizon. It means that there's very minimal. There are too many variables stopping these people from breaking out. And it's not just how much money they earn. It goes to diet, their culture, where they live, etc. Access to transport, access to healthcare, access to education. So they're all variables that impact upon that person's to get past the horizon. So they will
Mhm.
say that particular area is a low horizon area, which goes back to that question of equality, postcode or what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, postcode inequality or postcode lottery, depending on what postcode I'm in, basically says I'll live longer, I'll have a better aspect or future in my life, etc. So
Exactly.
it's interesting, but that's where kind of those type of projects come in and hopefully kind of bridge the gap. But I wish you all the best for it, mate. It sounds absolutely fantastic. And I think you need things like this podcast to get it out there. You can't just rely on social media. So I would say anybody that comes along and wants to chat to you, don't shy away from it, because I got that feeling from you when I met you the other night, where you were like, "Oh well, I'm not really," and I was like, "No, you have got something. You've got something to add, and you've got something to feed back, because when you've set up academy by yourself, okay, and two, you're running it successfully, and then three, you've obviously got this charity up and running, okay, and that takes a lot, mate. That takes a lot of effort. So if you get the opportunity to talk to somebody about it or podcast about it, take it, mate. Take it with both. Grab hold of it and go for it, and just get the message out there, because people don't know, and if they don't know, they won't engage on it. Are you doing any fundraising stuff? What are you doing to kind of maybe generate? Have you been invited to any kind of like black tie dinners or anything where you can talk about this? Or
Yeah, so it's still early doors. So we've been to a couple of kind of days where all the kind of community interest companies and charities get together. Yeah, I guess because it's so new, I guess we just have to be between the six of us, because obviously we've got like a social worker or a counsellor as part of the team, and that's a big part as well. So, almost like without downselling the jiu-jitsu aspect, a lot of it is going to be inviting families in, right, who are maybe struggling. So with the social worker and counselling aspect, you've got, the parent can be taken to the office area or wherever, and the child can go through some jiu-jitsu. And even if we don't go through jiu-jitsu, we just sit and chat, right? So it's more than just jiu-jitsu, but jiu-jitsu gives us a pathway into helping that family. So we've already had quite a few inquiries from kind of social workers who have got this family that are struggling. Can we go and meet them? Can we, maybe give the child, some jiu-jitsu and, help the parents as well. So it's just huge. It's just got so much potential. So I guess the funding we've applied for. So the great thing now is, because of the situation with Jiu-Jitsu and Sport England, that it's now recognised. So we're able to go and apply for funding directly. So essentially, it's a matter of looking at a fund, creating a pitch, sending the pitch, waiting about 3 months. That's what we're finding, and then they either come back and say yes or no or maybe. So the two projects that I know have been signed off and the funding's available for. So there's a free ladies self-defense seminar. So that one will be coming up, where basically the Sunday morning we'll basically give ladies a seminar around obviously using jiu-jitsu for self-defense. And the second one is actually when we look in our area in Walsall. So if any activities are taking place by the academy, we don't have a defibrillator anywhere near us. Okay. So the nearest defib is like 8 minutes away by someone who can sprint. I don't sprint, but if one of the team was to go and get it, you're looking at an 8 minute. And I think when you look at the kind of the power of having a defib on site, so that funding's been approved and signed off. So we get to install a defib outside the facility, and then put 6 people through the relevant training to be able to use that defib. So those are the two that have started. And it just happens that one of our someone that we know really well who trains jiu-jitsu has an ongoing heart condition. So just to not have that defib within touching distance just isn't right. So they're the first two signed up, ready to go.
Yeah, brilliant. Fantastic idea. I was just thinking a couple of things you said there. Dan Strauss, the Raspberry Ape.
Yep.
Yeah, Dan actually sits on the board. I've had him on the podcast before. So he sits on the board of the UK BJJF Federation Association, or whatever it is that's now been recognised by UK Sport. Mate, you should definitely reach out to him. I'm going to cut this little segment here and tag him in on Instagram, and you should definitely, even if it's just advice as to how to put your bid forward, he'll help you.
Perfect.
That'd be fantastic. So we can get you connected in that aspect. I suppose I wonder what you could do, maybe a minibus, a minibus for the area, so you could start picking the kids up, because that might be a barrier to them getting to the actual club as well.
Yeah, there's so many, and it actually, so to be honest, we are more mobile. So, they don't come to to WS2. So we go out. So it's a complete separate entity. So we will go out and roll out mats anywhere essentially. So and I think that's it. You are right that the transport is a massive barrier. You know, even bus fare is a massive barrier. So being able to throw some rollout mats in the back of a van and arrive at a location and teach, that's the bit, I guess, especially for schools as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, Dave, any more kind of like plugs you want to get in regards to the club, or any more projects or anything before we no shameless plugs?
No shameless plugs. No.
Okay, mate. Well, listen, it's been absolutely fantastic talking to you today. Thanks very much. I wish you all the best with that project. Like I said, I'll do my best to promote it as much as I can. And you know, just tag in as many people as possible. Good luck with Gracie Barra WS2. It'd be fantastic. I'll see you back on the scene, and hopefully see you again on the mat soon.
Perfect. Always welcome. No worries.
Thanks, Dave.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.